I am $499 to $519.
Yep.
The property was listed for $669.
Yeah.
How is there so much of a delta
Purchase your tracks today.
between two agents? I was in a
whatever
deal
cost.
and the agent said, Sandra, can you just make it happen?
Yeah.
Because I'm
terrible.
going broke. Yeah. I think there's more than 50% who haven't done a deal since January.
Yeah.
I was so frustrated this week because all I kept getting were texts.
Yeah.
I'd try to call the agent and I couldn't get him on the phone, and I'm like, I need to talk to you because I can't write all that in a text.
Yep.
Let's talk about agents,
Yeah.
right? And, communication, deals falling. I was so frustrated this week because all I kept getting were texts.
Yeah.
I'd try to call the agent and I couldn't get him on the phone, and I'm like, I need to talk to you because I can't write all that in a text.
Yeah.
Is it just me because I'm old?
I don't want to use the word old, but I think you have experience, you have the ability to kind of influence during a conversation, and it's probably why people don't want to pick up the phone, because they know that you're going to be able to talk them into something that they don't want to be talked into.
Except for my husband.
Yeah. Certainly people in the newer to the business have more of a tendency to want to text, electronically communicate, and I do think it's a real stumbling block for a lot of deals that could be put together in a way that's not unfairly advantageous for one person versus the other. I think that literally there are times where it just needs to be talked out a little bit, and you could arrive at a solution.
Yeah. So what types of issues are you seeing in the office, like amongst the agents? Like, what are the difficulties are they experiencing this year?
I'll give one example of one that I heard just late last week. First-time buyer, very interested in buying a home. They had gotten into an agreement, but then they wanted to add someone else to the agreement, a partner, relationship partner. So when they went to do that, of course, that you're basically restarting the down payment assistance application at that point.
Yes.
And so it was going to be a long time for the financing, right? And I understand the seller's perspective, right? That they don't want to be kind of off the market for a long time. But as I was talking to kind of each side, I could hear on the buyer side a genuine interest in completing the purchase, right?
Yeah.
They weren't kind of just messing around, you know what I mean, and holding up a property that they were never going to buy, right? And they were going to qualify. It just, the process is a long process in that particular way.
Because that's 21 days.
It's 21 days. Yeah.
Remember I came to you with that?
Yeah.
If you're going to be writing on my property
Yep.
and it's 21 days,
Yep.
my property's still going to be for sale.
Yep.
You have first right of
That's
refusal.
right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Why didn't you use that?
Yeah, you know what? I didn't think of it in that moment. It's a good one. But yeah, that's what it was, right? And so again, I had then asked the question like, okay, so how have you guys been talking? And it was all text, right? And so very easy to get kind of defensive and very easy to get blustery in a text to say, well, my client's this and my client's not going to put up with this. And I know that had they picked up the phone, I'm not saying it would have gone, but I would have said they would have had a greater chance of having a reasonable interaction.
And maybe as agents, they become too emotional.
100%.
And, I just did a deal with a younger agent, and the seller was prickly, I guess is the word to describe him. And I knew he was giving her a hard time because he appeared to have been and I was on the buy side.
Yeah.
And I said to her, I said, you know what? I said, I really appreciate how professional you've been.
Yeah.
You've been open to communication.
Yes.
You've been open to the hard communication that we had to have.
Yep.
But I said, you were awesome.
Yeah.
I really appreciated this.
Yeah.
And we just closed yesterday, and
It's great.
anyway, the house was messy.
Yeah.
But she was, because we spoke.
Yes.
And
Totally.
we were able, so, if you're a seller, if you were a buyer, what's the reputation that the agent has? And, how are they going to communicate to get the deal to home plate?
Absolutely.
And I think that's so important.
Absolutely. And, there's prickly people out there, right?
Yeah.
And the prickly people probably need someone in between the buyer and themselves more than anyone else, right?
Yeah.
And they need someone who is going to pick up the phone and have a discussion, and because they're going to drive a hard line on some things, and to drive a hard line on some things takes some negotiation and influence.
So how would you say the average agent right now is doing in Halifax?
Interesting. We saw some stats come out from our board, which I was surprised they released, but it's kind of demonstrated that I would say the cream is rising to the top is the phrase that my mom used to use, and that buyers and sellers are gravitating towards people who have a longer track record, have a little bit more experience. Certainly for people who have put together a good process and system, I think that's being really sought out by buyers right now. They want proven results. So that makes it harder for people that are newer in the business, who don't necessarily have that background. You really got to get out and outwork people at that point, and fill the pipeline much fuller than you might have had to in the past to have some deals come through. So I would say that there's lots of people who are struggling. There are some people who are thriving in the market because they do have a beautiful business that they built and are leaning off of that business, they're leveraging the fact that they have all that experience to take advantage of this harder market that we're in, and be perceived as someone who can help navigate that.
And speaking of hard market, so this is a couple of things I went up against. And because I do so much marketing, so reviewing the stats, I guess is where I was going. I went into a property and I'm like, you're between $499 and $519. The property, the sewage goes into the ocean.
Yeah.
There's a cistern,
Yes.
maybe enough for two people.
Yeah.
Now, granted, the house had a new roof,
Okay.
but the house on the inside was right from the 60s,
Yeah.
and nothing had been touched.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am $499 to $519.
Yep.
The property was listed for $669.
Yeah. Yeah.
How is there so much of a delta between two agents?
There's a lack of honesty out there sometimes. There's a lack of interest in having the hard conversation right off the bat with someone that you've just, started to build a relationship with. But I've always equated that to, like my doctor right now is off on a paternity leave. So if I need to go see this new doctor that's covering for him, and I walk in with an ailment, even though it's the first time we've met this person, I expect the truth. I expect them to give me their honest analysis, right? And so, you're walking in and giving your honest analysis to someone rather than telling them what they want to hear.
Well, we all have the same comps.
We all have the same comp. The data is not different for everyone, right?
No.
And yes, I could probably see difference in interpretation at like let's call it 3 to 5%. You know what I mean? So maybe I pick one comp that you don't pick that brings the potential up to 530. You know what I mean? Instead of 520.
But not 100 and something and change.
Yeah,
I was wild. I found this year maybe some desperation.
Yeah.
And, sellers are getting hung up on staging this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I've seen on the listing side with an agent who is staging, would you just please make the deal happen? Because I'm losing so much money every month, and I can't afford to keep this anymore.
Yep.
So how strong is an agent in that negotiation position when they are, in dire straits because they're spending so much money every month for staging?
Yeah, I understand the value of staging there, and I understand, choosing an agent based upon commission rate or what they're going to spend on your property or how much they're going to pay to market it or whatever the case is. But yeah, you don't want to demotivate the agent to want to just be rid of your home, right?
Because I'm hearing that.
Yeah, there has to be a bit of a handshake there. Where, hey, listen, we're going to be in this together, and the agent can't go broke. They have to make some money in the process too, right? And so, if your approach as a seller is that you're going to pick the person who's going to spend $5,000 on your staging, plus they're going to drop their commission by 1%, and plus they're going to spend another $2,000 on marketing, well, eventually, that agent's going to be out of business, and they're not the person that you want negotiating on your behalf either, probably, because to your point. they're going to be very motivated to be rid of your home.
I was in a
whatever
deal,
cost.
and the agent said, "Sandra, like, just can you just make it happen?"
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I'm
Terrible.
going broke. Yeah.
Just terrible. Yeah. That's
And
terrible.
I think that's going to happen more and more now.
Yeah.
Where I know the agent is, vested in making the deal happen.
Yep.
But they don't care at what cost now to make
Yep.
the deal happen because they're just,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think a seller needs to be very cautious
Yeah.
because I think there's more than 50% who haven't done a deal since January.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Who
It's a
haven't
lot.
done a deal. And you don't want that desperation with your real estate agents.
Totally agree. Totally
Yeah.
agree. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But on the flip side,
yeah.
I believe this is the market that makes agents.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because
yeah.
this is what, if I look at, your top agents, I guess, who do a lot of transactions around the office, we all started off in a market like this.
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
And,
yeah.
it was runt work. It was doing the open houses. It was a lot.
Absolutely.
But
yeah.
it was stuff that didn't cost me money.
That's right.
It was stuff that cost me time.
Energy and time. Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's one of the trade-offs that you expect. If you're employing a newer agent, you're expecting a greater amount of energy to be expended on your property because you should be getting all of their attention, right? And whereas if you're employing someone who's been in the business more, you should expect a better process, a better vetted process, something that has a track record. And yes, you might not be getting 100% of my time, but it's because I built a system that's going to help me sell houses, whether I'm, whether I've got my car parked out front of it or not, right?
No, I agree. I think systems are what is going to help a seller and even help a buyer.
Absolutely.
And the agent.
Absolutely.
Again, all about getting the home plate.
Absolutely, yeah, totally agree. So I mean, there's certainly there's some newer agents who are putting in that work, and they're getting there.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's certainly a bunch of people who are realizing that it's not quite what you see on HGTV.
Final question before you leave for the day. What's your prediction for 2027?
I think I said this going into 2026, but I'll say it again.
Because I'll hold it again. I come back to you, right?
Yeah. I've never had a harder time trying to formulate a prediction, right? I actually was talking to the folks at Royal LePage about this a couple of days ago, and they kind of asked me a similar question, and it's really hard to know. Does the war in Iran stop next week? Does the price of energy come down? Does interest rates, it's very rare that we don't know whether interest rates are going to go up or down. You know what I mean? Generally, you have a sense of where they're going to go. So I guess when you put all that into a bucket and swirl it around, I think we're not going to see a lot of change because all of that uncertainty leads to hesitancy or just caution.
What did we sell last year? 3,400 homes, 3,600 homes?
The single family ones, yeah, I think so. Yeah,
I think we'll probably be on par.
Yeah, exactly.
It's only another 1,000 transactions, so we'll probably be on par with that. So, I mean, that's okay.
Yeah.
At least it's not down, hopefully.
No. Yeah, and I think that's the number that we're watching the most is how many transactions. I think the whole world watches average price way too much and doesn't pay attention to how many transactions are happening because I think that's generally a more powerful indicator of how strong a market is.
So our prediction is going to stay the same?
Kind of flat, yeah.
And we're not going to have a huge spike next year?
I certainly don't think so. Yeah, I would be surprised at that if we did. But, I've been surprised in the past. And again, there's lots of, I would say, headwinds that we're sailing into, but there's also some things that are coming along that I think are going to benefit our region, so that could certainly help. But, underlying it all is affordability and consumer confidence, and I don't see those dramatically changing, so probably I don't see the market dramatically changing.
Okay, I'm going to write it down.
Great.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank
perfect.
you so much.